Hello, Facebook Live. Happy Saturday night. It's very still here. It's very cold. It's very peaceful. Let me know how things are where you are in the middle of winter. Hope you're keeping cozy. And I'm going to share some things tonight that I think are really going to warm your heart. This is a really big conversation, and I've been spreading it out so that we could really enjoy it and receive as much as we can, and also to really allow this time, like I'm kind of doing it almost like a little series, if you notice. I want to sort of drip the content and the conversation so that you can, not get bloated with too much, and to let it integrate, let it deeply sort of infuse you. Because these concepts and ideas, they're not really things that we normally talk about, and yet they're so vital to our well-being, to our juiciness and happiness, and certainly to our actualizing ourselves. I had a post today, and it was about when we open to receive, life just really rolls out the red carpet for us. This has been my experience, and I've certainly looked at receiving from both sides now, as the song says, and it's a lot more fun. Life is a lot more fun when we can receive. And yet, how many of us are receiving to the capacity that we desire? And why is this? It seems so counterproductive to not be a receiver, to block receiving, and yet we're really programmed and conditioned that way. Women especially, we're programmed to feel shame for wanting more, as if it's greedy and selfish. We also can really feel ashamed of needing help or wanting assistance, etc. And I know men can feel this as well. The receiving conversation, it's not just for women, but I work with women, so of course that's what I'm talking to. Hey, I love the hearts and all the thumbs up. I'm so glad you're here. And yeah, we're going to dive in. But before we do, I just want to say, if you are ready and able to invest in yourself and really shift your receiving and open your channels of receiving wide so that you can let in more of the love and the prosperity and the opportunity, the peace, the health, whatever it is you desire, you can go ahead and book a call with me, a session where we are really going to open your channels of receiving on that call. And that's $555 USD. And I also have, if you need more support, an upcoming, very extensive deep dive journey. It's 2 months long. It's called the Feminine Formula of Receiving. We're going to be starting that in 2 weeks. And this will be, it's a masterpiece. I've taught this to many, many women, over 120 women in the past. And I get the best testimonies from this particular program. Women just love it because they literally become different people in this program very, very quickly. You can become from a non-receiver to someone who feels resentful because you're not receiving enough, from being exhausted because you're doing too much, to a woman who knows how to receive, and a woman who energetically steps into this. It's not just head knowledge, although I will be sharing that. There's real energetic shifts that happen in this program. And I've watched it time and time again. Women actually getting pregnant when they couldn't, because we shift them out of their parasympathetic nervous system into their sympathetic nervous system. A lot of receiving, just like manifestation, it has to do with our frequency, our body, our nervous system, etc., and also our mindset. So I'm going to be covering all of that in this journey, and it is fun. The receiving rituals are fun. The information is exciting. When you get your hands on the dials of this information, receiving, you actually feel like a creatrix, like completely empowered, because you are. Now you know how to receive, People start looking at you differently. They don't know what it is about you. They don't know why, but they just feel inspired to give to you. And life starts to operate that way for you. And this has nothing to do with whether you are at the weight you want to be at, whether you are full of self-esteem or not. I know Carol was mentioning in one of the comments, and I loved her comment, and it was great because it's actually quite a interesting myth about receiving, and that you have to have high self-esteem. You actually don't. Receiving is not actually dependent on your self-esteem, as we will find out later, because I'm going to be covering some of the myths about receiving. I've been promising that. So tonight we're going to dive in. And so that whole journey, right now, the feminine formula for receiving, that's 8 weeks long. It's going to be a small, intimate group. That program has run before for $2,222. So $2,222. Right now it's on special, and it won't stay that price. It's right now $9.99 for the entire journey. And you also will receive a call with me. That's $555 for that call. So it's a really great deal right now. 2 months of mentoring, as well as a private one-on-one call with me. And we will really enhance your receiving journey in this program and in that call. So if you have any questions, I'm going to leave the link below, but if you have any questions, you can leave a comment under this video. Whether you're live with me right now, hello, or if you're watching the replay, and just write #afterparty if you have a question and you want me to see it. The other thing is, sometimes we don't know what's best for us in terms of private or a group program, or we think that, oh, you know, we don't really get seen in the group programs, maybe private is better, or in private we miss the interaction with our, you know, counterparts, people that are participating in the program with us. So if you're not sure, we can jump on a 15-minute clarity call, and that's for free. So if you want to know more about any of those, you can just DM me. So having said all that, why don't we dive in to this juicy, juicy topic of receiving. The whole idea of giving and receiving, it is something that really, I feel, is overlooked. It's like people don't realize how important it is. It almost feels like, I think, a bit of a luxury. And it's kind of like something like lucky girl syndrome, where people think, oh yeah, that's nice, you know, it's nice for her if she can receive, but, you know, I'm just going to be over here slugging it out, grinding it out, working hard. And I've certainly been there too. And many of us, we are overworking, overcompensating, overdoing, and that's just a recipe for burnout. It does not help. It doesn't actually mean we're going to receive more. In fact, it usually means we're going to receive less. And as I get older, so I'm, you know, entering to my 60th year. I just had my birthday. And if I know anything, I can tell you that receiving is really the keys to the queendom. Like, if you want the partner, the soulmate, the love of your life, and I've said this before, but it's not usually that the love isn't in your life or in your field. It's more that you have a pattern, a block to receiving it. And there's nothing wrong with you or the love that you're capable of. However, if you've been trained and conditioned to think that you have to do everything on your own, and all these ways of being that are very counterproductive to receiving, this is what could be blocking you. It's the same with financial support, or really any support. If things aren't showing up in your life the way you want and deserve, it may not be that it's a matter of those things aren't available to you, or there's anything you really have to do differently. It's not like you have to become more, or, you know, learn like certain things, or be more worthy. It's not so much that usually. Yeah, there may be some skills, there may be a little bit that, you know, you could cultivate. There are sometimes really things that we can learn, But I know right now, because of the women I work with, I know that right now, the way you are, at your weight, your job status, relationship status, however complicated it is, whatever, right now, where you are, you could be receiving more. And there is nothing you have to do. There really, really isn't. Once you understand the energetics of receiving. And that's what I'm going to be covering in the upcoming journey. And what I want to share tonight is some of the myths about receiving that might be keeping you from receiving more that you would like to receive. So we talked about one already. Carol had brought it up in a comment on one of my posts earlier. And I had said that when we know how to receive, the world just sort of rolls out the red carpet for us. And that has certainly been my experience and the experience of my clients who end up receiving more money, more clients, more business, more joy and fulfillment in their business and in their life and in their relationships, etc. And yet, Carol had mentioned this idea about if we are, mired down by low self-worth and self-esteem, we just, will be like, can't receive. And it sounds right. Like I think there is some truth to it, honestly. However, I think that we put too much emphasis on that. It's not really that we're lacking in self-worth or self-esteem. I feel sometimes that's almost a smoke screen. And we women are always preparing to live. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're always preparing, if we're, if we look better, if we are at a different weight, if we dress better, if we are exercising and dieting, if we're smarter, all of those things are great. I think those things are great because they make us feel good. And when we feel good, I feel like we are more of a magnet. But the thing is, I have attracted things sometimes in the depths of my misery and negativity. I could be having a fit at an airport or etc. And I can have people literally snapping to and helping me. Of course, I can have people helping me without the fit, but I'm just saying, one doesn't always have to be so positive and just so, perfectly where we want to be. Because I know for myself, like, I love to show up. I love to be at my best. I try to be at my best as much as possible for the sake of my family and myself. And life is better when I'm feeling better. But let's face it, we're not always feeling that way. And does that mean we're not going to be receiving? Does that mean we're not worthy to receive? No. We were born worthy, and nothing has changed no matter what. Whether we're in a good mood or a bad mood, we're still worthy. So it's really a myth. I call it a lie, one of the lies of receiving, that you have to be worthy to receive. And how I can kind of prove that is you can just look around in your life and notice who's receiving, who isn't. Not all the people who receive are the most wonderful characters in the world. Let's face it. And as I said last live, there are some people in your life with a heart of gold, and they are a light in your life, and yet they can't even pay their light bills. Like, they are broke. They're not receiving. So it really has nothing to do with being a good person or a bad person, having self-esteem and self-worth or not. Now, again, if we love ourselves and feel good about ourselves, I think that makes us more magnetic. However, I can tell you, you can receive no matter how you're feeling. You don't have to feel worthy to be worthy. You don't have to feel like if someone gives you a compliment, you may not be feeling that way. You may not agree with the compliment, whether it's about your work or your appearance or whatever. But you can still receive the compliment. And it came to you, so why not receive it? And if you are open to receiving, you'd be surprised what you can receive, whether you are in high self-worth or having a really bad day. So that's one of the myths of receiving. And if you have any questions about this or comments, I'm here for it. But I hope that clarifies that all this talk about, self-worth and self-esteem, which are actually two different things, but in my book, it doesn't really matter when we're talking about receiving. I don't really care what your self-worth is at the moment. It just doesn't factor in. I can teach you how to receive. It's a skill, and regardless of what you think about yourself, you can learn it. So how does that land? Who's here? Let me see who's here. Hi, Chris. Welcome, welcome. Randall, hello, hello. Tala, love your last name. Lamea, Kathleen, hello. Diana, hello. Moon Goddess, feminine is the receptacle. Yes, it absolutely is. Feminine energy is receptacle of the divine. Hello, Andrea. Welcome, welcome everybody. I'm so glad you're here. And again, if you're watching this now and you have a question, I'm happy to answer it while we're live. Or if it's later, just hashtag after party and I will come back and circle back. So that's just one of the myths of receiving I have for you. So here's another one. And this is something that my women, I've taken over 100 people through the receiving journey, either one-on-one or in a group. And one of the things that I hear all the time is that if I receive, it means I'm selfish. And that receiving is really like taking from someone else, and they'll have less if I receive. And this is, of course, a complete lie, because when you actually receive, it's very different energy than taking, oddly enough. And people who don't know how to receive, funny enough, they actually attract people who don't know how to give. And giving is a very different frequency than overgiving. Overgiving and overdoing actually blocks receiving. And taking is a very different energy than receiving. They're actually not the same thing. One gives the giver more energy, and one actually depletes the giver of energy. So that's kind of another topic, but just so you understand, taking and receiving, very different frequencies, different energies, therefore they're going to have different results in the real world, different consequences. So if we understand that giving actually is on a very different frequency, it's on the same frequency as receiving. It's not on the same frequency of taking, however. There is a difference. Giving and doing, or giving and over-giving. Very different frequencies than actually giving. And I love what Susie Orman says about this from back in the day. She really talks about how in order to actually be a generous giver, we must give from our overflow. And if we do not give from our overflow, that is not actually giving. And I completely agree. When we don't give from our overflow, we are depleting ourselves. And that is not the same energy as a real gift and really giving. So we're not really selfish when we receive. We're actually giving the giver the gift of our receiving. And the giver, I'm sure you know in your own life, when somebody has given to you and you are a delightful receiver, what happens? You feel good, they feel good, they're more inspired to give to you again next time or another time. And it just has this beautiful symbiotic relationship. And that's what keeps the flow going. And giving and receiving is a flow, and it is an energy. So doing energy can often be out of a place of overwhelm or depletion energy, not the same thing as a true give. But when the giver is actually giving from overflow, giving from their saucer, not from their cup, so to speak, that creates this beautiful energy and field and potential for us to actually receive. So when we receive, we're not actually being selfish. In fact, some would say it's selfish not to receive, Because when we don't receive, what happens? When we're depleted, we can become a burden on others. But when we do receive, we have more to give. So receiving is actually not selfish. I consider it a very generous way to live. And the more that I receive, the more that I can give. So I love to receive, and I love to keep my cup full. You just can't pour from an empty cup, right? So let me know how you feel about that one, because I know some women really feel if they receive, they're greedy or they're taking from someone else, but it's very different energy, receiving and taking. And really good receivers, abundant receivers, they actually inspire a lot more giving. It's fun. You'll watch this happen when they teach you the energetics of it, and when we release the blocks to receiving, you will see and you will notice how this shows up in your life. It's literally like the difference between day and night. You will see like, oh my gosh, like that just happened. Wow. So I love it. It's fun. It's exciting. Cheers. So that was myth number 2. And now I have another one for you. And that is, we're expecting company later, so people might be coming and going. The next one is, and you might have felt this yourself, which is, this is a big receiving myth. And it is simply that in order to receive, I have to work hard. Can't just receive. I have to do something, and usually I have to work hard, and I have to work a lot if I want to receive all the things that I want to receive, right? Not true. It's not true. And I'm going to prove it to you. Most of the people on the planet who control most of the wealth do the least work. And a lot of the people who work the hardest actually make the least amount of money. It's facts. Not saying it's right or wrong. Certainly not the way I would set things up if I was queen of the world. It really isn't necessarily fair, but what we're talking about is an energetic. When people feel that they have to work hard, or they even have to do something to receive, it's actually separating you from what it is you want to receive. It's not actually on the same frequency of the receiving. This is a little bit subtle. I'm glad I'm getting some hearts and wow faces and thumbs up. It shows that it's resonating. This is actually a very subtle point about receiving. There are some people who believe that in order to receive, you must take energetic, aligned, inspired action. Now, what I would say, what I've noticed, and I've tested this out and sliced it and diced it every way that you can. This has been sort of one of my, I don't know, what I call it, a hobby. Like, I went into such a deep dive of receiving over a decade ago, and now I just learn like osmosis. I soak it up whenever I notice someone in my field who's a really good receiver, or someone who isn't. You know, I just have this like sense, and I will learn whatever I can from it. And one of these myths about people feel like you have to take action to receive. It's not true. You can literally not take action and receive. Now, that doesn't mean all the time, but it certainly does mean it's possible, and it does happen, and it does happen a lot. It happens a lot for me. We were at a restaurant for my birthday, and I ended up with an order of something I didn't even order, and I ended up receiving it and getting to keep it. I remember at another restaurant, like a really swanky, expensive restaurant, the chef came out and just started like bringing dishes, more dishes that we didn't even order, and he was just like putting it in front of me. It was so funny and so cool, and everyone was like, yeah, keep it coming. I have literally received tickets. I remember once I was in a restaurant, and somebody came up to me and offered me 2 tickets to see a concert, front row, for Bruce Springsteen. This is back in the day. So I called my girlfriend and we went. It was like front row seats, and I didn't do anything. I was just there. I just said yes and I received it. And this person, I didn't even know them. They just had to get rid of these tickets. I was there. They gave them to me. Thank you. Stuff like this happens in my life all the time. I will order something online and end up with 2 of them. And I'll call the company and say, there must have been a mistake. I only ordered 1. I paid for 1. I received 2. And they're like, well, keep it with our compliments. And then I end up getting to give it away to someone else, the extra one. Little upgrades in hotels and airplanes and things like that. Just fun little, I was telling you some stories on the last live, like really embarrassing stories about how brutal I used to be at receiving. I remember one time I was an esthetician and I wasn't making that much money, although I did have some very wealthy clients and they did tip me pretty well. I will say I got some really, really good tips back in the day. I was very good at what I did. I was like the queen of self-care, right? And there was this one woman and she needed someone to watch her daughter, and I happened to volunteer. I used to love to babysit back in the day. Now, at this point, I was in my mid-20s, late 20s, just before I got married, and I volunteered, and I hadn't babysat for a long time, but she was in a pinch. She was a good client of mine. So I said I would do it. And I had a really good time with her daughter. It was just a little girl. It was really magical. We had so much fun together. And then at the end of the night when her mom came home and she went to pay me, I ended up declining like a total idiot. Like I could have used the money. She was very wealthy. And yet I did that because she was recently widowed and I just had a lot of compassion and I just felt like, how can I take money from her when she's a widow? And yet it was so crazy because my boss, who would take receive, I should say, $170, like when I would give her, this client, a massage for an hour and a half, it was like $170 my boss was charging. Victoria was charging, and Victoria and her were friends, and anyway, she would pay her no problem. And I would receive like $15 of it, plus she would usually, I would receive like a $20, $25 tip. So the tips really helped. But I had no problem receiving my pay. I had no problem that way. But when it was just me getting paid for the babysitting, I declined. Like just silly things like that. However, I have received in my life a lot of wonderful things. I remember once, well, I've received, 2 all expense paid trips to Maui, like hotel, food, airfare, everything. Trip to Italy. One time I was at an event. I remember this was really cool. And I was sitting beside this girl and we struck up a conversation, as one does. And then at some point she was like, hey, you know what? I have this suite at the Waldorf Astoria, that famous hotel in New York. This is where I was. I was in New York at the time. And she said, I have this huge suite. It's like 3 bedrooms. And I have a friend staying with me, but she wouldn't mind. Would you like to have the other suite? And I was like, why not? Because actually I hadn't booked a hotel yet. So we all went out. We had a little fun dinner and a night out on the town. And then I stayed for 2 or 3 nights in this amazing hotel for free. Just for fun of it, just for the fun of it. And I actually have a photo of her and her girlfriend. I was making my own perfumes at the time. So I was letting them smell my perfume, and they were just in heaven. They thought it was divine. So I have this photo. I'll have to dig it up, and maybe if I can find it, I'll post it under this video. Such a gorgeous photo. These 2 girls were just dolls. And I just thought it was so great how she just invited me like that. So things like this happen when you are open to receiving. And the other stories I told about the shoes and the rose, and I had a DM saying, well, of course, you're a beautiful woman, and men are probably throwing themselves at your feet, wanting to give to you. And yes, sometimes that does happen, but it's not always men. I actually do receive a lot from women as well. So it's not just, the sexual attractiveness at all. And if you're thinking that it is, once you learn how to actually receive, you will see that life literally loves a receiver and just is on its tippy toes to give to you. So whether it's children or You know, my son always says when we go for walks, like, no matter where we go, all the animals come out and they jump on me. Like they come right to me. It's crazy. And so it's not even just men, it's women, it's animals, it's just life. Things just fall in my lap. And this is what happens to my clients as well. Whether they want love or opportunity, I've seen people receive their dream house, clients of mine. It's a law, basically. I talked to you about the law of circulation in not last live, but I think the one before that. These are laws of the universe. And once you know the laws and once you start really practicing and embodying the truth of them, you can't hold these things back anymore. So those are the 3 that I wanted to share tonight. I think those are pretty good. And you can feel into your own life about where you might be blocking receiving with these myths of receiving. And there's actually one more, and it is, I think, it's the most insidious, it's the biggest, it's the most prevalent, and it keeps women in martyr mode for sure. This particular, cheers. This particular receiving lie is for sure the biggest one across the board, and it affects every single one of us. This I have tried on with everybody that I've ever talked to about receiving, and they all go, oh my gosh, yes, yes, yes. So actually, I'm not going to share this one today, because what I'm going to do, something even more special, is I am going to host a free workshop so that you can really work with me on the energetics of receiving in a very mini workshop. Okay, it's going to be like a masterclass, and it's called Open to Receive. And I'm not sure when I'm going to do it. Maybe in the next couple days. Maybe, I don't know if I'll do it tomorrow. Tomorrow's Sunday, and I usually take the day off, so probably not tomorrow. But in the next couple of days, and you will have to register for this, even though it's free, because I'm going to do it in a private setting and it won't be available to everyone. So I'll leave the link in the bottom. It's basically earthempress.com/open to receive, but I'll leave that somewhere below. So if there's any questions about the myths of receiving, let me know. And if you want to join us for the Open to Receive workshop/masterclass, I'll leave the link for you. And other than that, I hope this was helpful. My intention is to really create more receivers, to really dispel some of these receiving myths that block our channels of receiving, so that more women can become channels, open vessels of the divine, so that they can experience what I experience, which is really a divine love affair with their life. And this is how I live. This is how many of my clients live. This is how many women live when they're open to receive. And you may know some women, and you may see some women, and you may feel like, you know, sometimes a little bit like jealous or resentful because it looks like she's having it easier than you and she's receiving more. And it's not because she's more worthy, and it's not because she's necessarily doing anything. Because I've seen women who are like, if I think I'm good at receiving, I've seen some women, they are just like masters at receiving. I think I'm on my way. I think I certainly am a few steps ahead of most, and certainly where I used to be, but I know I always have more to learn. But there are women who can receive, and really it's not because they're doing anything different or anything so special. And yet, why does life just magnetize to them? Well, they may not be doing something different, but they certainly are being something different. And what that is a receiver. So if you want to know more about this incredible opportunity to receive, this incredible energy of receiving, the incredible opening that is possible when we discover how to receive, then this is what I'm offering, whether it's in a group or private. The group program is going to be 8 weeks long. It's a big journey. It's very deep. You're going to learn how to ask for what you want and receive it. This is something that trips up many women. In their ask is almost they're blocking themselves. As well, just knowing how to give and receive in balance. When you can do that, your life changes. You have so much more energy, so much more health, vitality, well-being. And life wants to give to you when you're not coming from depletion mode or overcompensating, etc., etc. So this is what's available to you. You don't have to be anyone special. You don't have to do anything special. You don't have to even know anything special. These things are quite simple, but they're completely counterproductive to what we've been taught and conditioned to believe. So this is what I'm doing. I'm on a mission to really dispel the myths of receiving and to share. I don't really want to say teach, but there is some lessons involved, but I consider myself more of a muse, more of an inspiration than a teacher, but I really, I feel I've been gifted with this knowledge and this information and this wisdom, and I've applied it in my own life with such amazing results, and I want this for everyone, especially for my community of Earth Empress women who are beautiful, heart-centered, loving, creative, and just beautiful souls, and they know that they're not receiving at the capacity that they desire. So if that's you, and if I'm speaking your language, then so much more is available to you. So you will go to the link below and register for my free upcoming workshop, Masterclass, Open to Receive. And let's get this party started. I can't wait. We're going to dive into more of things that you can do. Like in this class, I'm going to teach you number one, the biggest lie that's holding you back from receiving and keeping you stuck in martyr mode, I call it. I'm also going to share about my receiving practice. There's a couple, and a receiving ritual, as well my mantra of receiving, that as soon as you start using it, it will shift you. You're going to start feeling very, very different about receiving, and life will reflect that back to you. And there's so much more. So if that sounds good, you'll want to join me for that. And thank you for being here and joining me for this. It's a lot of fun talking about this, and I look forward to sharing more with you soon. So have a beautiful weekend, and I'll see you next week for Open to Receive. Bye, everyone. Ciao.